Waitress accidentally calls Sheikh love. He replies, "Come to my room." Comment what you thought of this story with a rating from 0 to 10 and tell me which city you're watching me from. I really want to know if you liked my story and I want to get to know you better, so subscribe to my channel to support my work. I'm counting on your help. The rain hammered against the windows of the Savoy Hotel with an intensity that seemed to echo the weariness in Amelia Jones's bones. At 23, she already carried the weight of the world on her shoulders, dividing her time between law classes at a public university during the day and her job as a waitress at London's most luxurious hotel by night. Her brown eyes reflected an iron determination that contrasted with the delicacy of her features, a natural beauty that not even the simple uniform could hide. On that March night, as she arranged the tray with the green tea that the guest in the presidential suite religiously ordered at 10 o'clock, Amelia felt the weight of exhaustion more intensely than usual. She had studied until 5 in the morning for a constitutional law exam, slept only 2 hours before waking up to help her mother clean 3 different houses in Knightsbridge. The money was never enough, but every saved pound brought her closer to the seemingly impossible dream: to graduate with a law degree and see the world beyond the confines of the East London Council estate where she grew up. The top-floor corridor was silent, her footsteps muffled by the thick carpet that cost more than her annual salary. For 3 weeks, the same guest had occupied the presidential suite, a mysterious man whom the other staff treated with a reverence she didn't initially understand. She only knew he was foreign, always polite but distant, and that he worked late into the night with papers scattered across the mahogany desk. When she saw Rashid al-Mansouri for the first time, Amelia felt something strange stir in her stomach. At 35, he possessed a magnetic presence that filled any room. His blue eyes, an inheritance from a French mother, contrasted hypnotically with his tanned skin and striking Arab features. There was a natural elegance in his every movement, from the way he held a coffee cup to the way he spoke on the phone in Arabic, his deep voice carrying an accent that made every word sound like music. But on that night, when Amelia knocked discreetly on the suite door, something was different. The response came in English, not the formal tone he usually used with the staff. She entered carrying the silver tray, and for a moment she completely forgot to breathe. Rashid was standing before the panoramic window, watching the nighttime view of London under the torrential rain. He was wearing only a partially unbuttoned white dress shirt and dark trousers, an informality she had never witnessed. The atmosphere in the room was charged with an intimacy that made Amelia's heart race uncontrollably. The lights were dimmed, with only the lamp beside the leather armchair and the glow of the city lights creating an almost dreamlike ambience. When he turned to greet her, she saw something in his eyes she had never noticed before, a deep vulnerability, a melancholy that contrasted with his always impeccable posture. "Good evening," he said, and his voice sounded different, lower, almost intimate. Amelia felt a shiver run down her spine as she walked to the coffee table to set down the tray. Her hands trembled slightly as she arranged the cup, the sugar, the lemon slices he never used, but the hotel insisted on sending. "It's been a difficult night," Rashid commented, approaching slowly. Amelia could smell his masculine scent, an expensive and captivating fragrance that made her head spin. "Business in Dubai is more complicated than I expected." For the first time in 3 weeks, he was speaking to her beyond basic courtesies. Amelia looked up and met his eyes, which were fixed on her face, studying her with an intensity that made her cheeks blush. "It must be very hard to be far from home," she replied, surprising herself with her own courage. A melancholic smile curved Rashid's lips. "Home," he repeated, as if the word had a bitter taste. "Sometimes I wonder where my home really is. Dubai, Where I was born but feel trapped by traditions? London, where I studied and discovered myself as a man? Or here, in this city, where for the first time in years I can breathe freely? The sincerity in his voice touched something deep in Amelia's heart. She recognized that feeling of not truly belonging anywhere, the sensation of always searching for something that seemed unattainable. "London has that power," she murmured, pouring the tea with automatic movements, "to make you fall in love and feel at home at the same time." Rashid chuckled softly, a sound she had never heard before, and that made her stomach flutter in a completely new way. "You have a wisdom that goes far beyond your years," he said, accepting the cup she offered. Their fingers brushed briefly during the exchange, and the electricity that passed between them was undeniable. "Thank you, sir," Amelia replied, trying to maintain her professional composure even with her heart pounding like an erratic drum. "Rashid," he corrected gently. "My name is Rashid. I think, after 3 weeks of talking about green tea, we can dispense with the formalities." The name sounded exotic and beautiful on her lips. "Rashid," she repeated, liking the feel of the syllables on her tongue. "It's a beautiful name." "And you are Amelia," he said, making her eyes widen in surprise. "Yes, I asked for your name. I couldn't stop noticing you." The confession hung in the air between them like a dangerous promise. Amelia knew she should thank him and leave, maintain the professional distance her job required. But there was something in Rashid's blue eyes that kept her rooted to the spot, a need that echoed her own loneliness. "I have to go," she managed to whisper, even as every fiber of her being screamed for her to stay. "I know," Rashid replied, but he didn't move away. Instead, he reached out and gently touched her face, his fingers tracing the line of her cheek with a reverence that made her tremble. "But before you go, may I confess something?" Amelia nodded, unable to form words with him so close. "Every night I wait for 10 o'clock, he murmured, his voice hoarse with emotion. "Not for the tea, for your brown eyes, for your kind smile, for the way you treat even inanimate objects with care. You have no idea how much light you've brought into my dark days." Amelia's heart was hammering so loudly she was sure he could hear it. "Sir, Rashid, you're welcome, love." The words escaped her lips before she could control them, a natural term of endearment she used with everyone, but which, in that charged moment, sounded deeply intimate and revealing. The silence that followed was deafening. Rashid stared at her with an intensity that awakened every nerve ending in Amelia's body, his blue eyes darkening with something she recognized as pure desire. The air between them crackled with electricity, and she could feel the exact moment when everything changed forever. "You called me love," he said, his voice lower, almost a rough whisper that sent waves of heat through her body. Amelia felt the blood rush to her face, mortified by the slip, but unable to lie or shy away from his penetrating gaze. "Yes," she admitted, her honesty surprising her. It was then that Rashid, moved by an impulse that contradicted all his years of rigid self-control, all the social protocols that governed his life, whispered the words that would change both their destinies forever. "Then come to my room." It was not an order, but an invitation laden with restrained desire, a surrender to weeks of denied mutual attraction. Rashid's eyes shone with a vulnerability Amelia had never seen in any man, a need that transcended the physical and touched something deep in her soul. Amelia knew she should refuse. Her rational mind screamed all the reasons why this was impossible, dangerous, potentially devastating for her career. He was a hotel guest. She was an employee. They belonged to completely different worlds. She could lose the job that not only supported her dreams, but also helped her mother. But there was something in Rashid's blue eyes that went far beyond physical desire, a loneliness that echoed her own, a void she recognized in herself. "Yes," she murmured, the word coming out as an almost inaudible whisper, but it resonated between them like thunder. Rashid extended his hand, and when she took it, she felt an electric current surge up her arm. He led her slowly through the luxurious suite to the bedroom, each step a conscious choice, an opportunity for both to retreat that neither took. The rain continued to beat against the windows, creating a cocoon of intimacy that isolated them from the outside world. In the bedroom, lit only by the soft glow of the lamp and the reflection of the city lights in the rain, Rashid stopped and turned to her. His hands trembled slightly as he touched Amelia's face, as if she were made of crystal and might shatter at the slightest rough move. "Are you sure?" he asked, his voice hoarse with restrained emotion. "Because once we cross this line, there will be no turning back." In response, Amelia rose onto her tiptoes and touched his lips with hers, a gentle kiss that quickly intensified as Rashid pulled her against him. There was a desperate urgency in their movements, as if they had been deprived of water for years and had finally found a spring. His hands roamed her back, her hair, memorizing every curve, every texture. When they finally broke apart to breathe, Amelia saw tears in his eyes. I've never felt anything like this before," Rashid confessed, his vulnerability touching her deeply. "In 35 years, I've never met anyone who made my heart beat like this, who made me forget who I'm supposed to be." "Who are you supposed to be?" she asked, her hands tracing the strong lines of his face. "A responsible Sheikh," he answered, the word coming out like a painful confession. "Heir to an ancient family, promised in marriage since I was 15, a prisoner of traditions I did not choose. But here, with you, I can just be Rashid, a man who has fallen in love with an extraordinary woman." The revelation should have scared her, but instead, Amelia felt a wave of tenderness. She knew the prison of circumstances, the invisible chains that bind people to destinies they did not choose. "Then just be Rashid," she whispered. "For tonight, forget the world outside." They made love with an intensity that left them vulnerable, stripped not only of their clothes, but of all the masks they wore to protect their hearts. Rashid touched her with a reverence she had never experienced, as if she were the most precious thing in the universe. Between caresses and whispers in Arabic that she didn't understand, but felt in her soul, Amelia discovered that love could be born in an instant, devastating and transformative. Afterward, lying between silk sheets that cost more than her 6-month salary, they talked until dawn. Rashid told her about his golden childhood in Dubai, but also about the loneliness of growing up under the weight of impossible expectations. Amelia spoke of her dreams of seeing the world, of the sleepless nights studying after working 12-hour shifts, of the fierce determination that moved her every day. "You are the strongest person I have ever met," Rashid said, lazily tracing circles on her bare shoulders. "You grew up without privileges, but you possess an inner wealth that I envy. And you are much more sensitive than you appear," she replied, kissing his neck. "Behind all that elegance, there is a man who just wants to be loved for who he is, not for what he represents." When the sun rose over London, they knew they had crossed a line from which there was no return. What had started as an attraction had turned into something much deeper and more dangerous. Amelia had to leave before the other staff arrived, but the promise of meeting again hung in the air like a sacred vow. In the weeks that followed, they began a secret romance that took place in the shadows of the hotel. Rashid discovered in Amelia a woman of inner strength that completely fascinated him. She studied late into the night after working 12 hours, dreamed of distant horizons even while living in precarious conditions, and treated everyone with genuine kindness regardless of their social status. She represented everything his golden life in Dubai lacked: authenticity, humility, pure determination born from necessity and not privilege. Amelia, in turn, got to know the man behind the fortune, someone trapped by ancient family expectations, who felt suffocated by the responsibility of perpetuating traditions he didn't choose. She discovered he used wealth as armor against vulnerability, that he had grown up surrounded by people who respected him for his money and position, never for who he really was. Rashid began to help her financially in a discreet way, offering to pay for her university and providing opportunities she initially refused out of pride. He admired her fierce independence, the way she insisted on working even when he offered to support her completely. "I don't want to be kept," she said one night as they studied together in the suite. "I want to achieve my goals through my own effort." "And that's exactly why I love you," Rashid replied, pulling her in for a kiss. "Your strength inspires me every day." Through her eyes, he rediscovered London in a completely new way. They visited places he would never have known in his world of butlers and drivers, the rooftop of her building in the estate, where they gazed at the entire city sparkling in the night, small hidden gem eateries where she introduced him to hearty, unpretentious food, the park at dawn, when only the joggers were awake and the ancient trees whispered secrets. Amelia showed him an authentic Britain, far from the sanitized tourist routes for millionaires. She took him to meet her mother, Mrs. Jones, a small but formidable woman who received him with the natural hospitality of a Londoner, but also with the protective gaze of a mother who knew the dangers that surrounded her daughter. "He's different from what I imagined," Mrs. Jones commented after Rashid left, her voice tinged with surprise. "There's kindness in his eyes, genuine respect. But be careful, my daughter. Rich men have obligations that we simple people don't understand." The warning echoed in Amelia's heart, but she pushed it away, too lost in love to think about the consequences that were approaching like a storm on the horizon. Amelia and Rashid's happiness lasted exactly 2 months and 17 days. She knew because she counted every morning she woke up in his arms as an unexpected gift from fate. But the real world has a cruel way of destroying dreams born in secret, and the storm arrived in a way neither of them could have foreseen. It all started with a photograph taken by a paparazzo who was too clever for his own good. Amelia and Rashid had been careful, always discreet, but love has a way of making people careless. One Sunday afternoon, when they thought they were safe in a secluded corner of Hampstead Heath, they allowed themselves a moment of abandon. Rashid kissed Amelia against the orange sunset, their silhouettes cut against the sky like a scene from a romantic movie. The photographer, hidden behind the trees, captured not only the kiss, but also the moment Rashid whispered something in her ear that made her laugh with radiant happiness. The photo was sold to the country's biggest tabloid for a sum that would make an ordinary worker dream for a lifetime. The headline plastered on the magazine cover on Monday morning was devastating: "Billionaire Sheikh dating British waitress." The 8-page article dissected every aspect of their lives with the clinical cruelty of a post-mortem examination. They revealed Rashid's fortune, his noble lineage, his promised marriage in Dubai. They exposed Amelia's humble origins, her work routine at the hotel, and even interviewed neighbors from her estate who talked about the studious girl who had always dreamed of getting out. Amelia discovered her new fame when she arrived at work on Monday and found a crowd of journalists waiting at the hotel entrance. Camera flashes exploded in her face as reporters shouted invasive questions. "Amelia, is it true you're pregnant with the Sheikh's child? How much money did he give you? Did you know he's engaged?" The last question hit her like a punch to the gut. Engaged. Rashid wasn't married. He was promised. But the journalists had discovered something he had never told her. Amira, his cousin and promised fiancée, had already been presented to Emirati society as his future wife. For all legal and social purposes, he was a committed man toying with a naive British girl. The hotel director, Mr. Thompson, called her into his office before she could even reach the locker room. He was a pragmatic man who had managed the Savoy for 15 years, and his grim expression told her everything she needed to know before he even opened his mouth. "Amelia, you know how much I appreciate your work," he began, his formal tone contrasting with the friendliness they had always shared. "But the hotel cannot afford this kind of scandal. We have a reputation to uphold, other important guests who cannot be bothered by this media circus." "I did nothing wrong," she said, even knowing her words would sound empty. In the world Mr. Thompson inhabited, the appearance of impropriety was as damaging as the act itself. "Perhaps not," he agreed, but his eyes said otherwise. "However, your conduct with the guest was, at the very least, inappropriate. I am being forced to dismiss you, effective immediately. You will receive 1 month's salary as severance." 1 month's salary. 5 years of impeccable work, of always arriving early, of treating every guest like family, all reduced to a single month's pay. Amelia left the office in shock, collected her few personal belongings from the locker room, and faced the crowd of journalists again. This time, she said not a word, just lowered her head and walked through them like someone going to her own execution. Rashid learned of the scandal when his personal assistant Ahmed entered his suite with an expression he had never seen on the discreet man who had been with him for 10 years. The magazine was open on the coffee table, their photograph leaping off the page like a silent accusation. "Sir, I received a call from Dubai," Ahmed said, his voice careful. "Your father is on his way. He will arrive this afternoon." The words hit Rashid like a death sentence. Khalid al-Mansouri never traveled without extremely serious reasons. If he was coming to the UK, it meant the situation had spun completely out of control. Rashid thought of Amelia, of how she would find out about the scandal, of how betrayed she would feel for not knowing all the details of his commitment to Amira. He tried to call her, but the phone went straight to voicemail. He tried to go to the hotel, but was blocked by the crowd of reporters that had set up camp in the lobby. For the first time in his adult life, Rashid al-Mansouri found himself completely powerless, unable to protect the woman he loved from the hurricane his own existence had created. Khalid al-Mansouri arrived in London accompanied by an entourage that included lawyers, press advisors, and 2 security men who looked capable of breaking a person in half just by looking at them. At 62, the patriarch of the al-Mansouri family still radiated the kind of authority that made kings bow. His grey eyes, identical to his son's, were as hard as steel as he entered the suite where Rashid was waiting. "Explain," was all he said, his voice filled with a cold fury Rashid had known since childhood. Rashid told him everything. The chance meeting, the passion that grew between them, the feelings he had never experienced before. He spoke of Amelia's strength, her intelligence, her ability to make him feel human again. Khalid listened in silence, his expression growing darker with every word. "You have forgotten who you are," Khalid said when Rashid finished. "You have forgotten what you represent, the responsibilities you carry. Our family has ruled for 800 years because we understand that duty comes before personal pleasure." "And what if I no longer want to carry this burden?" Rashid asked, the question he had held in his heart for decades finally escaping. The slap Khalid delivered across his face echoed through the suite like thunder. "Do you have any idea how many people depend on us? How many families are supported by our businesses? How many ancient traditions will be destroyed if you decide to play commoner with a British waitress?" The words about Amelia made Rashid stand up, his fists clenched. "Do not speak of her that way. Amelia is worth more than our entire court of sycophants in Dubai. Perhaps she is, Khalid agreed, surprising him, but that is irrelevant. Amira has already publicly announced the wedding will be in 6 months. Her family has invested millions in the ceremony. Business contracts worth billions have been signed based on this marriage. Are you willing to destroy all of that for a teenage crush? The guilt Rashid carried about Amira was a constant weight on his heart. She didn't deserve to be publicly humiliated, didn't deserve to have her name dragged through the mud because of his feelings for another woman. Amira had been a friend throughout his childhood, someone who had graciously accepted the role imposed on her by the family. "Come back to Dubai with me today," Khalid continued, his voice softening calculatedly. "Marry Amira as planned. Give the family children. Fulfill your destiny. In a few years, when everything is settled, you can have as many mistresses as you want. Be discreet, and no one will care." The suggestion nauseated Rashid. The idea of reducing Amelia to a mere mistress, of having her hidden in the shadows while he feigned love for another woman, was a betrayal of everything they had built together. "Never," he said, but his voice didn't sound as firm as he had hoped. Khalid smiled, a cold smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Ahmed, show him the photographs." Ahmed reluctantly handed Rashid a manila envelope. Inside were photos of Amelia being harassed by journalists, of her mother crying at her front door while neighbors comforted her, of offensive graffiti that had appeared on the wall of her old school. The last photo showed Amelia in the cramped flat she shared with her mother, the curtains drawn, her face marked by tears of humiliation and despair. "This is just the beginning," Khalid said softly. "The longer you delay your return, the worse it will get for her. The British press has no limits when it comes to scandals involving rich people. They will utterly destroy her life." Rashid looked at the photos again, feeling his heart break. Amelia was suffering because of him, being dragged through a world she had never asked to be a part of. The love he felt for her, which had been the purest thing in his life, had now become the source of her destruction. "If I return," he said slowly, "you guarantee she will be left in peace." "I have contacts in the British media," Khalid confirmed. "One word from me, and the interest in her will vanish. She can resume her normal life." That night, Rashid made the hardest decision of his life. He wrote a letter to Amelia, each word torn from his heart like living flesh, explaining that his love for her was real, but that his continued presence in the country would only bring more suffering for them both. He gave the letter to Ahmed, with instructions to deliver it, after he was already on the plane to Dubai. The next day, the newspapers reported his abrupt departure. The media interest in Amelia began to wane, just as Khalid had promised. But for her and for Rashid, the pain of separation had only just begun. 2 years, 3 months, and 12 days. That's how long it took Amelia to completely rebuild her life after Rashid's departure. She knew because she had marked each stage of her recovery like a soldier counting the days until returning home. The letter he left remained sealed for 6 months in her dresser drawer, a paper ghost she didn't have the courage to face until she was strong enough to read his words without completely falling apart. Her law school graduation came amidst the emotional chaos, but Amelia attended the ceremony with her head held high, wearing the simple dress her mother had bought with her last savings. Mrs. Jones cried more than her own daughter when she saw Amelia receive her diploma, the first person in the family to complete higher education. At that moment, among the audience's applause, Amelia promised herself that she would turn her pain into fuel to reach heights that not even Rashid could imagine. The first few months were brutal. No law firm wanted to associate its name with the scandal that still echoed on social media. Job interviews always ended with looks of recognition, followed by polite excuses about no vacancies available at the moment. It was Dr. Robert Anderson, a veteran human rights lawyer, who finally gave her a chance. He had followed the case in the papers and saw beyond the sensationalist headline. "You know injustice firsthand," he said during the interview in his modest office in the city centre. "That will make you a better lawyer than anything they could teach you at university." Amelia threw herself into her work with the fury of someone who had something to prove. She defended single mothers against abusive employers, fought for the labor rights of domestic workers, represented council estate residents in cases against illegal evictions. Every case won was a small revenge against a world that had tried to reduce her to just a footnote in a powerful man's life. Meanwhile, on the other side of the world, Rashid al-Mansouri fulfilled his destiny with the mechanical precision of an expensive watch. The wedding with Amira was exactly what everyone expected. A spectacular ceremony that cost $15 million and was considered the social event of the decade in Dubai. Photos graced magazines worldwide, showing the perfect couple exchanging vows in a palace that looked like something out of an Arabian Nights tale. But behind the golden facade, Rashid had become an emotionally dead man. He fulfilled all social obligations, expanded the family businesses with the cold competence he inherited from his father, but had completely lost the ability to feel genuine joy. Amira, for her part, turned out to be a more complex woman than he had imagined. Educated in London, she possessed a sharp intellect and a pragmatic understanding of the world around them. "We both know this marriage wasn't our choice," she said one night, 6 months after the ceremony, as they dined in silence in the formal hall of their mansion. "You don't have to pretend you love me, Rashid, but at least treat me with respect." Her honesty caught him off guard. "Amira, I know about the British girl," she interrupted, her voice calm but firm. "Everyone knows. What I want is a life where we can be civil to each other, where we can fulfill our obligations without destroying each other." That's how they began to live as polite strangers sharing the same roof. Rashid dove even deeper into business, traveling constantly, sleeping in the office more nights than at home. Amira developed philanthropic projects and maintained the social appearances her position required. They were the perfect couple in the eyes of the world, but they lived completely separate lives. Fate, however, has an ironic way of correcting its own mistakes. The International Conference on Social Justice and Human Rights in Dubai was an event Rashid had sponsored for years, a way for his family to demonstrate global social responsibility. As one of the main funders, he always attended the opening ceremony, greeted the distinguished participants, and delivered the protocol speech on the importance of justice in the contemporary world. Amelia had been selected to represent the UK at the conference due to her exceptional work defending disadvantaged communities. At 25, she had become one of the country's most respected young lawyers in the field of human rights. Her dissertation on access to justice in marginalized communities had garnered international attention, and her presence at the conference was a well-deserved recognition of her competence. When Rashid saw Amelia among the participants at the opening ceremony, he felt as if the floor had disappeared from under his feet. She was even more beautiful, with a mature, confident beauty that radiated inner strength. Her hair was tied in an elegant bun. She wore a navy blue suit that highlighted her new professional status, but it was her eyes that impressed him the most. The same brown eyes that had bewitched him. But now they shone with the confidence of a woman who had faced storms and emerged stronger. Amelia saw him too, of course. For 2 years she had tried to imagine what it would be like to see him again, had mentally rehearsed casual conversations where she would demonstrate her indifference. but nothing had prepared her for the wave of emotions that hit her when their gazes crossed the auditorium. He looked thinner. There were lines around his eyes that hadn't been there before, a subtle sadness that not even his impeccable attire could hide. They managed to avoid a direct confrontation all morning, but fate conspired to have them meet alone in the hotel garden during the lunch break. Amelia was reviewing her notes for her afternoon presentation when she heard footsteps on the grass behind her. Amelia. His voice, deeper than in her memories, made every fiber of her being awaken. She turned slowly, prepared to maintain the professional composure she had cultivated over the past years. "Rashid," she replied, and was pleased to note her voice sounded firm. They studied each other in silence for a moment that felt like an eternity. There was so much to say, so many questions and recriminations hanging in the air between them like ghosts demanding attention. "You look well," he said finally, and it wasn't a question. "You are radiant." "I am," she confirmed, lifting her chin with pride. "My life has taken turns I never imagined when we met. I discovered I'm much stronger than I thought." The pain in his eyes was almost imperceptible, but she caught it. "I've read about your work," Rashid admitted. "Your name appears in international journals. You've achieved everything you dreamed of." "Not everything," she replied without thinking, and immediately regretted the involuntary revelation. The silence stretched between them again, heavy with memories and regrets. It was Rashid who broke it first. No," Amelia interrupted. "Not here, not now. I have a presentation in an hour and I need to focus." But even as she spoke, she knew it was a lie. Her concentration had been shattered the moment she saw him. The chemistry between them remained intact, even more intense, matured by their separation and personal growth. "Can we talk tonight?" Rashid asked, his voice filled with an urgency he tried to disguise. "Please, I need to explain so many things." Amelia should have refused. She should have maintained the safe distance she had built around her heart. But the plea in his blue eyes destroyed her carefully constructed defenses. "The hotel's midnight lounge," she said. "Midnight." That night, they talked until dawn like two strangers trying to recognize each other. Rashid told her about the loveless marriage, about living like a gilded prisoner in his own life. Amelia talked about rebuilding, about how she had turned the pain of their separation into fuel for her dreams. They discovered that time had healed many wounds, but it had also made it even clearer how much they complemented each other. It was during this conversation that Amira appeared unexpectedly in the lounge. Amelia expected confrontation, drama, jealousy. Instead, she found an elegant woman who greeted her politely and sat at the table as if she had been invited. "You must be Amelia," Amira said, her voice surprisingly warm. "I've heard a lot about you." The conversation that followed changed everything. Amira revealed she had never truly been able to love Rashid and was maintaining a discreet relationship with James Mitchell, a British diplomat she had met during her studies in London. She herself was a prisoner of the same system of traditions that trapped Rashid, but she had found a way to be happy within the imposed limitations. "I propose something," Amira said, addressing them both. "A discreet divorce that allows us to seek our true happiness. Traditions are changing, even in Dubai. If we do this the right way, respecting social appearances, we can succeed." In the months that followed, they worked together to create a strategy that would satisfy both family expectations and their personal needs. Amira and Rashid publicly announced they had decided to divorce amicably due to irreconcilable differences, an explanation that Emirati society reluctantly accepted but eventually respected. Amelia returned to the UK, but this time with a concrete offer. to legally represent the social development projects Rashid intended to implement in Latin America. It was not charity or a pretext for getting closer, but a genuine professional partnership that respected her competence and independence. When Rashid arrived in London 6 months later, they met again, not as the powerful Sheikh and the humble Waitress, but as two adults who had grown through pain and discovered that true love is worth any sacrifice. The marriage proposal happened on the same spot on Hampstead Heath where they were photographed years before. But this time it was just for them. No hidden cameras, only the city skyline as a witness to their promise of eternal love. Together, they built a life that honored both their origins and their dreams. The Rashinya Dubai Educational Foundation offered scholarships for young Brits to study in the Emirates, while cultural exchange programs brought Arab students to experience the UK. Amelia kept her law firm in London, specializing in international law, while Rashid established dual residency, dividing his time between the two countries he now called home. At the wedding ceremony, small and intimate in a historic London chapel, Mrs. Jones cried with emotion, seeing her daughter in a wedding dress being led to the altar by a man who looked at her as if she were the very light of the world. When the officiant asked if Rashid took Amelia to be his wife, his response echoed through the chapel like a sacred promise. "I do, love," he said, using the same words she had whispered that first night at the hotel, closing the circle of a story that had begun with a natural term of endearment and had blossomed into the truest love either of them had ever known. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to my channel. I promise to bring you videos every day that will make your life happier. Comment what you thought of my story with a rating from 0 to 10, and thank you very much.